Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome, my friends. My name is Vincenzo, and welcome to my channel, Fountain Pen Therapy. Yes, folks, welcome to another weekly recap. This is weekly recap. I don't know what the number is, but it's March the 2nd, 2024, and I've got another great show for you. I think I've lined up some news, some trends. We've got some pen spotlights, ink spotlights. And then I've got my editorial. So, you know what? Let's get started right away. We have, lots of stuff to talk about. And I do want to get rolling. So, what do we start with? Well, let's start with some news in the fountain pen world. And I think the first thing we got to discuss is the Lamy sale to Mitsubishi Pencil Company. And what I think I'm going to do, folks, is I'm going to put up on the screen for you the press release that was issued by Lamy, or I guess it's a joint release. Having been involved in, I wouldn't say in, deals of this magnitude, but, sales, I know how it all goes down, and I think one of the major questions is going to be, Lamy, a family-run business selling to a multinational. Well, let's put things into perspective here. Yes, when we say that Lamy is a family-run business, I think all we're trying to say here is that it's a private company, okay? But have no illusions. Lamy is a huge company. I mean, it has more than, more than 340 employees. It's got standalone stores. It's got distributors all over the world. It's a well-established company. It's been around since, 1930. Yes, it's owned privately, or it was, and now a publicly traded company by the name of Mitsubishi Pencil Company Ltd. has purchased it. But let's look at the press release. The first thing to note here, and I've kind of highlighted what I think are major points. Mitsubishi Pencil Company Limited has been around since 1887. And, it's not a car company. This is not a car company that's buying a writing instruments company. Mitsubishi Pencil Company Ltd. is a writing instrument company, which is good news, I think, because its main focus was the Uniball and pencils and that sort of product. It did not have fountain pens as part of their lineup. And they've gone to acquire a very well-established, popular writing instrument maker and, in Germany. So, I think there's some synergy there, or future synergy. That's the first thing to look at. Second thing, the press release talks about how the Lamy family had to go through a very long and complex process of looking for a buyer. So I think their main interest was, and it's clear from at least from the press release, they wanted to find somebody that shared in some of their vision and some of their culture. And what's important here to note is that there was a commitment to keep the business location in Germany. And trust me, this is part and parcel of the written documents. This is just not fluff. I am certain that they were smart enough to put that in writing, and it's a condition, a well established condition in the sale agreement. At least I would presume that. And what's interesting here, there's talking about developing or finding a partner to develop growth area of digital writing and expand international sales. Now, for sure, the Mitsubishi expands that, okay? Which is, I think, very good news for Lamy. This thing about digital writing, I just want to mention to you that, let me just see if I could put this up on, yeah, here it is. I mean, Lamy did already start to dabble with a digital product, and they had this digital notebook with a pencil, as you could see, so kind of rival the iPad, and maybe they just want to expand that. These types of product development cost a lot of money, and I think that by going through this sale and partnering up, or being owned by Mitsubishi, all of a sudden they've opened the bank account. So they've got capital to be able to, go out and produce or develop other products. It's a whole new chapter. For sure, it's a whole new chapter for Lamy. Some people are very weary. It's a big company swallowing up a small company, and they're going to bottom line. That's for sure. A publicly traded company is going to have as one of their major priorities the bottom line. I have no illusions. The Lamy family was looking at the bottom line as well, but I can understand where it's a little more cut and dry when you're a public company, whereas when you're a family owned or a private company, you're probably prepared to take some additional losses just to kind of keep the culture going. But having said that, I think that it's I think it's good news. I'm going to try to be a little more optimistic, if you will, and let's wait and see. And nobody can really predict how these things go. And there have been some horror stories, and there have been some wonderful stories, especially in the writing instrument industry. We think about Schaefer, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there is going to be some capital advantage there. Mitsubishi is not a huge company, and Lamy is just one small division. Where in other words, it's not a company that manufactures all kinds of things from milk to automobiles, and Lamy is just one small division. No, Mitsubishi, is a writing instrument company, which is good news, I think. And, usually what comes with this, and it's not, I don't think I saw it in the press conference, but in the press release, but, family or the private owners of Lamy, the Lamy family, oftentimes what happens with these deals that they're asked to stay on, and in this particular case, there's a commitment that they're going to keep all the manufacturing and all the offices in Germany where they are now. And oftentimes there is a commitment on the part of the previous owners to stay on. Now they either stay on as, even executives and paid executives, or as consultants, at least for a long period of time. And the Lamy family may have actually, as part of the conditions, imposed conditions such as, keeping on certain people that they know will be able to, keep the good parts or all of the good stuff status quo, and move on in all of the bad stuff. So that may be a condition. Of course, I'm not privy to the agreement. The other thing is they may even have as a condition that they not start firing staff, that sort of thing. So it may be a condition whereas we change owners, we go get a big fat pocket bank account and leave things the way they are in Germany. I have no illusions. Mitsubishi is going to try to take some of their products and put the Lamy brand on it, and maybe vice versa. So there's going to be some cross-branding there with cross products. We shall see. But look, it's interesting news, and I think we need to talk about it. And what's interesting, and I will put up on my on my screen, is this: that at the same time as this is going on, of course, Lamy just issued or just announced their two limited edition 2024 pens, which some people like the color, the color combination. Some people don't. They don't like the pink. Some people like the darker purple. And at the same time, there's another little bit of a controversy was over one of the inks, which is the Lamy dark lilac ink. Apparently, people right away, there was a leak where some European entities obtained samples, and there was a leak, so the sample came out, and the big question was whether or not this was the return of the 2016 limited edition ink, by the same name, which was apparently very limited in quantities, and it went like hotcakes. They weren't available. I mean, I read in one reviewer mentioned, I think it was Goulet mentioned that that ink was selling lately or recently was selling as much as $300 on the internet because of the limited quantities. So the big news was, well, is it the same thing? And Goulet put up, let me just put that up on the screen for you. Goulet did it, got their hands on a sample, and they did a a comparison of the two inks, and they actually posted a blog. Here's the new ink. So you can see it's kind of shading on, it's got some shimmering, not shimmering, but sheening with green and purple. And there's the comparison. You can see that the new one is a lot darker, and that the old dark lilac was a little bit more purplish. So there was a more magenta with the old, and there's a little bit of dark green in the new. There's the swatch, and they do a they do a comparison. So you can tell here that it's more magenta than there is in the 2024. But it's interesting that at the same time as all of this is going on, the Lamy gets sold. I believe it's Goulet that mentioned that there was a New York reporter, or was it the New York Times? I forget, that wanted to do an article on the Lamy ink, and then at the same time, of course, Lamy ends up selling or announcing its sale to Mitsubishi, and so kind of priorities shifted quite quickly. So it's interesting that Lamy was all over the news in the last couple of days, and I never really went crazy over the Lamy products. I mean, I have two Lamy. I have the Safari. I have a Vista. I do have a Lamy pencil and a roller ball, I believe. But I never bought really any of the other products, especially the 2000 and all the rest of it with different nibs. I felt that their price points was a little bit too expensive for what I enjoyed in a pen. But look, nobody can deny it. Lamy has been a force in our industry, and I wish them all the best of luck, and hopefully Mitsubishi will get them going in a better direction, or increase their capacities, etc., without sacrificing everything that's been outstanding from that company, especially that German quality and that German excellence. So there you have it. Next in the news is the TWSBI came out with I'm putting it up on the screen, the new Echo. It's a dark sapphire. Frankly, when I look at this, I'm not sure I see anything exciting about it. It's certainly not as exciting as the Indigo with that rose gold trimming. But look, through that Indigo offering, I discovered once again TWSBI, and I've got to tell you, it's just a beautiful pen, and I think I'm enjoying the TWSBI Echo much more than the AL series. So there you have it. That's also I think something that I wanted to talk about. The next thing I wanted to talk about was Delta has come up with, let me just put that on the screen. And you know me with Italian pens, I like to keep you guys informed. There's this new model that Delta's come out with, which is the SPACCANAPOLI model. The SPACCANAPOLI, I believe, is like is one of an old quarters in the city of Naples, and where you have many old buildings and historical buildings on that avenue, or in that district. And so you've got different pens, as you can see. Look at this pen. It's just gorgeous. I mean, you're looking at here, by the way, this is the Giardino Italiano site that I've been raving about, where you can find a lot of not only Italian products, by the way, but a lot of sales on Italian pens, and I'd like to keep you informed of those. I think this is a beautiful pen. Take a look, and I think each pen is dedicated to a different historical building, and as you can see, you got everything from a red to a brown, to a blue, to yellow, and to a solid black, a red again. And look at the price, folks. It's for the rollerball, it's 105 euros. And 114 euros. I can tell you I'm going to sweep up one of these pens. And it will form part of one of my monthly Italian pens at reasonable prices. 14 euros roughly is about, $150 Canadian, 160 Canadian, and much less in US. I think it looks like it's a nice pen, so I will buy it, and it will be featured in one of my future reviews. So I did want to mention that. Now, speaking of Giardino, while we're on the site, I'd like to show you where it is that we can find the sales. So if you go down on the page, you'll see that there is a What's New outlet department, and if you click on that, you'll find the sales. So for example, this was on sale and I purchased it and I actually reviewed it. Now you see it got sold out. That was the steel nib one, and that's where I end up paying like less than $200 for it. But now the only thing that's left is the 14 karat gold at $325. But I did want to show you how that worked. If we go back, one thing that I wanted to show you, I think that is worthwhile looking at, is this. It's the Tebaldi Bologna collection. I've always wanted to add this to my collection, and maybe this might be one of my purchases, especially this kind of orange brown version. And look at that, €140. So that's roughly, almost less than $200 Canadian, and certainly much less in US. This may be a worthwhile purchase. So I did want to mention that. Another something else that I wanted to mention for you is Italian pens. That's another company that I always look at. They have all the Italian pens and more on sale, and I wanted to show you that in the Gioia section, there's quite a few on sale. The advantage with Italian pens is they offer their pens with 14 karat gold nibs. At what I find, this is $275 US, very, very reasonable price. And one of the pens that I've been looking at, and I keep hesitating, is this one. This pen, folks, is just, I need to buy it because every single time I'm looking at the sites to see if I can find anything cheaper. I did contact Italian Pens and asked them if I can get the pen in steel with a steel nib, and they said no. And with the steel nib, they're being sold at about $220, $230, $240 US. Here at $275, you add $30, $40, and you get a 14 karat nib. And I'm certainly looking at this pen. I think it's gorgeous. It's huge. It's chunky. I like that Van Gogh-ish resin. So stay tuned, folks. I may pull the trigger anytime soon. In terms of sales and in terms of other things that are worthy of mention, I wanted to mention that Pen Chalet. Folks, Pen Chalet is a great site. You can always find the most recent products. It's a go-to site for me, even more than Gold Spot and Goulet. Just for me, I find their prices are just always more competitive. They have what they call a moving sale going on with all kinds of bargains. I invite you to take a look at their bargains. And one of the things I've been looking on their sites is I don't own an Italian Pineider pen. And I keep looking for sales, and I found some on sale at the Pen Chalet site in this moving sale announcement. So that's another pen that I've been looking at. But there's, look at this Bennu limited edition, the Halloween edition at $110. There's all kinds. There's this Magna Carta at $113. There's Navlar Ebonite at $113. So you can find, I think, some good sales. Look, you can look at it more closely. I'm not going to go through everything here, but I did want to mention that Pen Chalet sales are, I think, worthy of mention. Now, what else have I got to talk about? Okay, let's look at fountain pen therapy pen spotlight. That's what I think I'm going to call it from now on. And my iPad just gone off on me. But the first thing that I wanted you to take a look at is You know, I reviewed this week this pen, and maybe we could just go on my, I will switch to my overhead camera. There you go. The Foluin, what I called, you know, I said there's no name on it. It's the Foluin carbon fiber gold pen. Well, you know what, folks? There is a name to this pen, and I don't know why AliExpress didn't have it. This is the one I reviewed, and let me just show you that there, in fact, are more colors. If you go on the eBay site, I discovered that it comes in red, and the actual name is the Foluin 2030. It comes in red. You could see that it comes in this yellow as well. It comes in, where is it? This purple here. It comes in this gray. And I think there was another grayish design, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just go back here. Yeah, take a look here. There's this kind of yellow with little marks in it. So there are different colors, folks. So I suggest that you take a look at the same pen, and it's probably even cheaper. It's the Foluin 2030 for those who have interested. Some of you had asked it. I mean, I remember a comment that had it been in red, I would have bought it, or had it been in green. I think they even have green, by the way. And again, I'm not, it may be somewhere else here, but I think I saw it in green as well. Just take a look at eBay. I think you'll be able to find some very interesting different color combinations for the Foluin. What else is there to talk about? Well, let me go to my overhead camera again. And remember these things. 1 second. I have a review, and I'll maybe put it in the description about this thing. Was the Mysterious Big Pen. Okay, and I did a complete review with the green one because that time I did review the red orangey one wasn't out yet. It's of course a clone of the Urushi Pilot Custom or Custom Pilot pen. Very, very close clone, I got to tell you. And I did a complete detailed comparison of the two, not having the pen, but looking at, you know, with my iPad, etc. I invite you to look at that. And it was a mysterious pen. A lot of people call it the Mysterious Big Pen, etc., etc. But you know what? It may not be as mysterious as one would think. I will put up on the screen just a photo, a shot of an ad. I believe this is on AliExpress. I forget where I saw it, but there you have it. It's in fact a Jinao, folks. So it appears, anyway, the Jinao was behind that pen right from the get-go. And now you have different colors. As you can see, you have it in the dark green, that red, and you have it in the blue, and you have it in the yellow. So I think that's interesting, and an interesting tidbit that I thought I'd share with you. Let me just go back to my notes here. 1 second. Okay. What else do we have to talk about? Now, on the Chinese front again, there's not much news, I got to tell you. There is, one more thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah, before I forget. And that is that Wingsung, remember there's that Wingsung 630, which is, that comes with, until now anyway, solid colored barrels. I can tell you, let me just go back to the main screen here. I can tell you that now that pen appears to come in a translucent, transparent barrel. And I'm going to put it up on the screen. You can see now it's being offered with that transparent barrel, which is interesting. And I've put an order for that pen. I just like to see, you can see the filling mechanism, and it's an interesting twist by Wingsung. And when there is really nothing else out there these days, I thought it was worthy of mention. Just to let you heads up, my Jinao 9016 that I ordered back in January the 6th hasn't even left China. The outfit that sold me the pen is an outfit by the name of LB Stationery Store I got to tell you, I'm not impressed. It's now more than 2 months. It hasn't, when I track it, it looks like it's still stuck in China somewhere. I mean, I should have just ordered it on Etsy, but it hadn't been, it wasn't out by Etsy at the time. I mean, Etsy is really good these days. And even AliExpress, I think if you do business with the right outfit, you can get your pen fairly quickly delivered, at your home or in your mailbox. So I'm regretting here, I just heads up, if you see this LB stationery store, I don't know what kind of reviews it's got, but let me tell you, to take more than 2 months to deliver a 9016 is ridiculous. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is, so that's on the Chinese front. Otherwise, I think it's pretty quiet. So I'm looking forward to something happening sometime soon. Now, what else do I got to talk to you about on the fountain pen spotlight? Let me go to my overhead camera again. I did buy another Scrivener. This is the other Scrivener model that I found interesting. It's again with that Schmidt medium nib. I think it's a nice pen. It really is. I like this blue. It posts very nicely. It's a nice balanced pen. It's got that slippery aluminum kind of material that you get used to, but I think I will be reviewing this pen. I'm not sure yet because it is just another Scrivener model and it's quite similar to the other one. But I thought I mentioned that these Scrivener pens are turning out to be very, very nice. Nice clip. They're really write beautifully. That Schmidt nib, again, I got to tell you, I love those Schmidt nibs, and I know some of you said they're cheap, they don't cost a lot, and it's not worth the price, but a little pricey. A lot of good marketing, but I think this is ultimately a very good writing instrument. So I did want to add that to the picture, and it will maybe be reviewed. What else do I've got on the fountain pen as a spotlight? Well, I've got another Lotus pen that I've ordered. Look at this. I mean, it comes into this beautiful box, and I will be reviewing this pen in this kimono. And I bought this again on Peyton Street Pens. They have some Lotus PSP collaborations. And here it is, another Elomelite model. Just a gorgeous. I love that other model I had, the Arthur. And I purchased this one in a 1.1 stub Yowo. I just love this material, and I'm going to be doing a detailed review of this pen. It's chunky, it's got good weight, excellent quality, and there you have it. Now, Lotus did promise that they would send me a pen for review. Never got it. I sent them a follow-up email to find out what's going on. They haven't answered back. I'm not sure what's going on, and look, if they don't want to send it to me, it is what it is. Thought it would be interesting if I can get a pen for you guys for review, but they haven't responded. It's either that or it was a scam, and at which point maybe they got my address, and it's just a whole scam. I'm not sure. I'm openly questioning what's going on there, but in any event, Lotus, if you want to wake up, folks. Otherwise, I like the way they are. Okay, so there you go. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I finally got my, and just bear with me a second. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. I finally got my Pilot Custom 823, folks. I got to tell you, I did not mention it on the air, and I did not mention it during my reviews because I didn't want to commit, publicly. But one of the things, apart from, one of my goals was to keep doing Chinese pens, looking at Indian pens, look at some affordable Italian pens. But one of the things that I noticed was missing in my collection is some of these Grail, pens, such Pilot, Sailor, Pelican. And I said, Vincent, you can't go on with some of the only Pilot pens I owned were some of the cheaper Metropolitan pens and some of the more, less than $50 sort of offerings. And I said to myself, Vince, you've got to get going here. And I just saw so many reviews, and everybody kept saying this is, if you have to like leave this planet with a fountain pen and you have one pen to bring with you, which one would it be? And this one appears to be the one. This Pilot A23. It's, I had to decide, do I go with the fine, extra fine, medium, broad? And what I sensed was that these Pilots do have a finer line. These Japanese lines are a little bit finer than what we're used to here in North America or even in Europe. So I went with the broad. We'll talk to you about nibs in more detail later on in my editorial, but I'm not sure I made the right decision yet. So I may be ordering another one like this, maybe in medium, maybe even in fine. I have no illusions. My broad, this is a broad, and it just writes beautifully. I'm really glad to add this to my collection. That nib is just exquisite. So I've been enjoying this pen for quite some time this week. I think I've inked it already almost 2 or 3 times because I've done a lot of practicing of my handwriting. As you know, I'm changing my penmanship, etc. And we'll get to that in my editorial. So finally, took the jump, folks. 823 forms part of my collection now. So those are the pens that I've ordered and received. What else do I've got? What else do I have in the pipeline, so to speak? Well, speaking about taking the jump. As you know, last week I asked you folks to give me some input on the Parker 51. Let me just take a sip of my cappuccino. Because I was looking into buying Parker 51. I wasn't sure whether I should be buying the vintage, the modern version, or even a clone version. Wing Tsun's got some, Jinhao's got some, Hero, etc. And after listening to you, and by the way, thank you very much. I did say last time I asked for your opinion, I only got one person suggesting, and all of a sudden last week you guys responded, and I thank you very, very much. The majority of you was that if you're going to get anything, get a vintage, but be careful with vintage pens. You've got to know what you're doing. And a lot of you said, just, I think you can spend your money elsewhere. So I kind of abandoned the idea. I don't like the idea of buying a vintage pen because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't like, with these sacks and these different filling mechanisms, and it's not my thing. So, and the modern version costs $250, if not more. And apparently it's just not worth the price. So, and that nib was experimental for me. So I'm not sure I would like that kind of hidden nib. So if I want to try it, maybe I should just buy a cheap Chinese version, test to see if I like that kind of thing, and then maybe look into it. But so I've dropped it altogether. If I have to spend $250 on that, I said to myself, I will invest my money elsewhere. And I think I made the right choice. What have I ordered, folks? I've ordered a Pelikan, not the M400, not the M600, not the M800. Yeah, I went for it. I went for the M1000. I'm really looking forward to receiving that pen. Here again, I was, and you'll find out why in my editorial, I was hesitating. Do I go with the broad? Do I go with the medium? Should I do fine? All the reviews said the Pelikan is not like Pilot. The nib is very soft. That M1000 nib, in fact, is different from the M800 and the M600. It's a very soft nib. It's a big nib. It's very, very juicy. Your broads are like triple broads. You know me, at the time, it was, I like, larger lines. So I said, I'll compromise. I'll go with a medium. So I've ordered a medium. And even then, I think the medium writes like a broad. And you'll see why in my editorial. There again, I'm wondering whether or not I may have to get myself a fine. But having said that, I haven't received it yet, so I can't comment. Well, when I get it, I'm really excited. I think it's a big juicy nib, big juicy pen. I'm glad that I've taken the jump in that direction. I'm now looking at, do I get an Urushi? Do I get a King of Pens Sailor? I think I need to add to my Sailor collection. The only pen really worthy of mention is my Sailor 1911, which is very small, but with a beautiful 21 karat nib. So the next jump here is, do I look at Sailor to add, or do I look at some of the Italian pens, the Scribo? Do I get a Visconti Homo sapien? And that's where I'm going to ask you guys to come in. Please suggest to me the next Grail pen that I've got to get. And look, let's put things into perspective. A Grail pen, I don't want a $10,000 pen, nor a $2,000. I think it's got to be somewhere around the $800 mark, if you will. Okay, 800 Canadian with, maximum 1,000. What do you guys suggest? I've seen the Visconti Homo sapiens at anywhere between $500-$600, and that's US. But those nibs could be kind of hit and miss. But what I understand is if you get in touch with some of these reputable retailers, you can ask them to please test the nib before you send it to me, and they'll oblige. Do I go with that? A beautiful Aurora Optima, which is $400 or $500 with a gorgeous gold nibs. Do I go with the Scribo, which is anything between $500, $600? Do I look at some of the Montegrappa higher end pens? What do you guys suggest? What do you folks suggest? What should I be looking into? Is the King of Pen the next choice? What do you suggest? So I'm looking forward to hearing your comments. So there you have it in terms of the pen spotlight. Next is, what have I got on the ink and paper spotlight? Well, let's start with the inks. By the way, I've ordered the Endless Alchemy links. Here's a photo of what those inks look like. Gorgeous bottle, nice concept. But I don't know what's gone on with Pen Chalet. I've ordered those back in January, so I wrote to Pen Chalet and said, what's going on? Why is my order not here yet? Because you're usually very good. A week or two I get the products. Apparently Endless is yet to, it's in back order. Endless is yet to ship them the inks, so they're waiting after Endless. I'll be patient. I think those bottles are interesting, so stay tuned for that. I did want to do one review for you folks. You'll remember that, and let me go to my overhead camera once again. Remember that I had the Van Dieman's 2023 collection. For those of you who are not familiar with this collection, it's it's inks for every month of the year in 2023. I've reviewed these top four. And I'll just show you, for those who did not see my previous reviews. Those are the first 4 months, going from January to April. Okay, kind of all going on the green-blue side of things, light inks. Okay, there's no shimmering there. So those were the first 4 that I reviewed. And now I thought I'd review for you very briefly, and I'm not going to get into details, from May, June, July, and August. So here are the swatches. So I won't bore you with doing swatches online, but here they are. Let's start with the first one, and let me zoom in here for you. So the first one is this. That's the color for the month of May. As you can see, it's a nice shading, shimmer, and sheen. Lots of sheen on that ink. On the purple gold sort of side, nice smooth saturated ink. So that's the May offering. Then we'll go down. This is kind of a weird ink. This is the June. It's kind of stone gray, evoking winter in the Australian highlands. I like it better in the writing. I'm just not very fond of these kind of really light inks, and I'm not sure how much this would be a kind of a go-to ink for me. But for some of you who do like these lighter shades, there you have it. I had to kind of blob my, go over my swatch several times to get that one, but I don't think you'll get that when you write. So this is more like what you would get. It's a gray. It's a real silver gray. The next one is this color of the month of July. Again, a very light ink. I like the swatch, the way it came out. little darker, but again, the writing is very, very light, similar to the gray one. I'm not sure how much I would use that as a daily writer, in fact, at all. Then I have the August. Now we're dealing with a little more sheen. I think it's an interesting red. Maybe not as vibrant as some other red colors that I've purchased recently. But that may be something that I might try. They recommend it with a medium or broad nib. So that's something that I might ink one of my broad nibs with that ink just to test it out. But there you have this week's, if you will, let me just, this week's ink reviews, from Van Dieman's. In terms of paper review, I don't have much for you folks. It's not something that I concentrated on. The only comment I would like to make was that in my Cypress Micarta review, I used this French ruled paper as my paper for review. It's a GSM 90 GSM Clairefontaine paper, and I know some of you or one of you made a comment that it's kind of distracting to see all those lines, and they prefer when it's just either a plain paper or just a simply ruled paper. I mean, the reason why I used it is because I'm practicing my penmanship on this new type of ruled paper. I don't think it's that distracting, but for those of you who feel that you don't like this paper, let me know. And if that appears to be a consensus, well then, we'll switch papers up. But you know what? I think I'm done with this French ruled paper anyway. And that I may be going in another direction, as you will see in just a few minutes. So there you have, in terms of the pen and or the ink and paper spotlight for you. So what's next? Well, what's next is kind of more personal. I would call it an editorial, to the extent that you can do an editorial in fountain pen reviews. But here you have it. Let me just take a sip of my cappuccino. Again, I thought I'd track with you my progress. As some of you may know, and those who don't, I've decided to change my handwriting, or as you maybe in a more eloquent way of putting it is, I decided to improve my penmanship. There you have it. Going from a vertical type of Gothic, almost Gothic handwriting, as my wife would put it, to a more slanted, cursive, Spencerian, Palmer, American sort of writing. And I wanted to report to you on the progress. Actually, let me just get for you some of the samples I have, and we'll go to my overhead camera again to do that. I have been making progress, folks. So it's, let me just here back on my camera. Okay, here we go. So what have I done some progress? I think I have. Take a look at this. I think my penmanship is slowly improving. I'm trying to get as much as possible that slant, and I'm experimenting with different letters. So there you have, these are different pens that I've used with different nibs. Here is another sampling of where I'm really trying to get that, that slant going. As you could see, the handwriting, I think, is slowly improving. And I really religiously practiced every day. I came home from a long day, or early in the morning when I worked from home. I would take the 15-20 minutes and just go through a series of pens and just jot down all kinds of notes, most of which made no sense. It's just any word that came in my head. I think that's the way I'm going to practice. I'm not going to practice letter by letter and keep repeating A. No, I don't think I want to do that. I want to do it by just writing. And I also decided at the same time that get my journal going. So this is my kind of my penmanship journal that and I've gotten away from the lines altogether. What I do is I use that kind of a template underneath to give me at least some sense of direction. And I've got another one that has even a slant. And there you have it. So I've been journaling religiously with different pens again, just writing all kinds of nonsense. And eventually I will journal some, deep thoughts and maybe more intelligent thoughts. Right now, the journal just simply talks about the pen that I'm writing with and how I feel and the nib and the flow of the ink. But there you have it. So that's my journal. I think I am progressing. But having said all of that, what I really wanted to talk to you about is the following. Let me just take out what I think I need for this next portion of my... Okay, let me back up as much as I can here. Okay. This is my pen box, and what I discovered, and some of the comments led me there, by the way, is that, at one point I thought that it would be easier for me to improve my penmanship with stub nibs. And in one of my reviews, I mentioned that given that the stub has a kind of an automatic, let me just give you an example. In this pen, you could see that the stub has this line right on top there. And so when you write, the line kind of follows the direction of the slant. And not only that, when you use stub nibs like this, or even italic nibs, your handwriting is so much nicer. So you're kind of a little bit cheating because your handwriting looks much better than it really is. And one of the viewers mentioned to me, and I took it seriously. He said, Vincent, if you want to improve your penmanship, you should not be cheating. In other words, he didn't use those words, but he or she recommended that I use actually fine and extra fine nibs, because when you use fine and extra fine nibs, you cannot cheat. The line is what the line is, and it's better to practice with fine nibs than with stubs. So I took that suggestion seriously, and I've been going through a kind of an evolution here. The evolution is that I've always, right from the get-go, I've taken all the pens, and whatever pen I received, I would replace the fine nibs, the medium nibs, the extra fine nibs with steel Yowo stubs. I don't know. I think I don't know how many Goulet pen $15 Yowo stubs I bought at the time. Many years ago. Dozens, because every pen I would purchase that didn't have a stub, I would replace the nib with a stub nib. And so what I have over time is accumulated, let me just show you, is I've accumulated like boxes of nibs. So every section you see, these were nibs that I removed from pens and replaced with Yowo nibs. And I've got everything from, fine, extra fine. I would replace it and put the stub pen. So, that's my accumulation over time. And when I went back and started to look at some of the fine nibs, I realized they didn't have many pens. Recently, the Chinese pens had fine nibs. So I said, okay, well, let me practice with the fine nibs. So what did I do? The first thing I decided is that I would take this. This, by the way, is a gorgeous pen. I got to review it one day. This is an Aurora 88, not vintage, but older style. And take a look at this nib. I mean, this is let me just see if I could just get closer here. It is a 14 karat gold nib. Look at the point on that nib. This thing writes just absolutely. And yes, I started writing with this pen. A pen that I hadn't inked in years, months, and that just recently I've been forced to. And I realized that my pension, oh, wow, was it fun to write with this fine nib. So that's the first pen that got me going, okay? The next pen that got me going, believe it or not, I know some of you don't like this thing because it is an imitation or a clone of a Mont Blanc, but this, I got to tell you this, and I mentioned it last time, this Majon P138, I recommend it. And it came with a fine Majon nib, which usually I order medium, and this Majon fine nib, just exquisite. I mean, and then, I start practicing with this nib, a fine nib. Then, of course, we have my Wing Sung 630 with that, number 8 sized fine nib, which just writes just beautifully. So this thing got me going. And then I had my Jinhao fine number 8 size nib, which is just a juicy nib. We got my D5 Ogdian fine nib, and the nib on the D5 is so springy and soft. So that got me going. On this Majon, I think it's the N7000 or 700. I've got a Bach fine nib, beautiful nib, and so the story went. And I decided to go back into my pen collection and to look at all the fine nibs that I had. And kind of, you have a sampling here, and more particularly with this is a Marte Modena clone. It's really a clone of, well, it's a long story, but Delta gave permission to, when it stopped its operations, it gave permission to Marte Modena to do some of their pens. So this is like a Dolce Vita, and it comes, engraved with Dolce Vita, Federico. It uses the name. I think some of the materials were actually Delta stock, and they were much cheaper, and they all had these, they had fine nibs on them. So this one, for example, I put a Kenwright kind of semi-flex nib, working really nice. But I went back to the Marte Modena nibs, and I bought the pens originally with fine nibs, medium Marte Modena nibs, broad, and take a look at this. This is a Marte Modena. I don't think it's gold, but really springy. It's like a fine nib. Take a look at and you can tell how thin it is. It's got that spring. I think they may be actually Bach nibs. I'm not sure, or even in-house nibs. And these fine nibs just wrote just beautifully, smooth as you wouldn't believe. Same thing with the medium and the broad. And so my adventure went on. I took out, of course, the fine on the N10. I took out the fine on this 100. This is another Marte Modena. I put on this a Stipula fine nib. And I was having a great time. And then I said, how can I combine fine with, get that feeling of that stub? So what I did is I went on FP Nibs. I don't know if you guys know the website. They sell nibs, and they grind your nibs for you. And I decided to buy, this is a Gioia Bella Vista, decided to buy a Gioia nib. This is a fine, but with a italic grind. So it's just got, I don't know if you could see that, but it's just got that very small italic grind on it that, gives me that sensation of a stub, if you will. Now, the italic grind was a little too italic, so it was a little bit too scratchy for me, so I had to kind of polish the nib. And in so doing, I think I turned it into a cursive italic, so a little more rounded, so it doesn't catch on the paper and gives me a little more control. But I think, folks, that I may have found something here. This cursive italic fine nib. And all of these fine nibs is kind of, taken up my fancy. And you can see all of the writing with these fine nibs here. going from my Aurora right down to Mongdian. You have all these pens that I practiced on, and I thought their lines. Look at the lines. I mean, it's just smooth and I'm getting used to it. The fine nib. So, folks, I've seen the light. Fine nibs may very well form part of my collection from now on, and those stipular nibs may take a back seat, or at least if I have a choice of getting another grind on my nibs, I certainly, Cypress does it, Stilo Stile does it, FP Nibs does it. So that's what I've got there. In terms of my next drawer of pens, these are all the medium that I managed to put together. So these are all medium nibs going from my Mont Blanc to this this beautiful titanium Bach medium number 8 sized nib. Beautiful. Actually, this is my broad nib collection. So these are all broad. This is another Marta Modena, nib, original nib. There you have it. That's a broad that I mentioned. I took out of my box. And then, of course, you've got all these broad nibs, including, imagine, I had a 14 karat Delta. This is the Delta Journal. A nice old pen. I had a 14 karat, no, actually, this is an 18 karat Delta nib broad. Threw it away. Not threw it away, but put it in my box and replaced it with a Yowo stub steel at $15. I'm only starting to realize how silly that was. When I write with this nib, it's just absolutely fabulous. The same thing, I had my Laban pens that I removed, and Laban nibs have just an absolutely beautifully smooth nibs. I don't know if they're Bach nibs, but the Laban nibs, I've never had any problems with them. And of course, you got my Schmidt nibs in the the Admach and the Bennu. So there you have so that is the broad. Again, the theme is stay away from stubs. And this is the broad. This is my handwriting where I practice, and I took, swatches, if you will, or samples of each of these pens. And look at the lines. It's just beautiful. What was I thinking again? So this is all the broad pens that I took out. The next drawer that I will be pulling out is the drawer of the medium pens. There you go. And, I got some medium nibs on the Safari or on this Lamy. I've got a medium nib Moonman Mahjong. This is a Laban medium nib. Then, of course, you got all your Chinese with starting from Mongdian. I have the Heartbeat medium nib that just came out for Jinao with number 8 size, which is just beautiful. The flow is just excellent. And so on and so on and so on, and going down the line. And again, I realized I had a Delta, my second Delta Journal, which is a gorgeous pen. This is an original journal, vintage, so to speak. 14 karat gold Delta nib, medium, that I put in the box, and I had replaced with a steel stub. Well, folks, this is the nib that came with this pen. This is the nib that will stay, because this medium nib, gold, Delta, finely tuned, can't beat it. You can't beat it. And here again, what I did, went to FP Nibs, same time as the other one. I ordered a Joya, and they have Yowo nibs, a Joya rose gold nib, or rose gold colored nib. This is a medium italic. So I got an italic grind on it. Again, it was a little too scratchy. I polished it down. It's now a cursive medium. But what a juicy, interesting pen this makes. So if I don't want to go with my straight mediums and I want that sensation of a stub, well, there you have it. I've got my cursive italic medium nib. And I got to tell you, I'm going to get more. I'm going to get more because I like it. But there you have my medium. And here's my writing sample. Look at those lines. It's just beautiful. And I have one more surprise for you, but one more confession to make about this pen. Let me just remove this from circulation. And guys, you've got to be patient with me and not jump to conclusions. What is this pen? Well, this is a joke that was played on me by one of my sons, okay? He knew that, I had mentioned to him that when you go on the website, he had seen Mont Blancs at $15, $20 on some of the Chinese sites. And he says, Dad, what are you talking about? I saw Mont Blanc pen being sold for $15. And I said, you got to be careful. They're clones. They're fakes. And, a Mont Blanc pen doesn't cost you $15. And months went by, and I didn't, we never heard about it. And then one day, my son said, Dad, you helped me out on this particular thing. I thought I'd buy you a nice gift. And so I bought you a Mont Blanc. So he gave me this 146 as a gift. And I said, Dad, you got to be kidding, because these 146 brand new, they're hundreds of dollars. I forget what they're going for, but they're not cheap. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, and I opened it up, and it had a nice kind of a rose goldish nib. And, when I write with it, so take a look at the line. I mean, just very, 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 very smooth, just no problems at all. No leaking and no drying. Folks, this is a fake. It's a fake. It is a fake. I apologize to all of you. It was a big joke that my son played on me. I just can't believe how, and I got fooled. Look, if you look at this pen closely, you'll find out, all the things that are wrong with it and everything else. But this is not an inspiration. This is not a clone. This is not an inspired pen. This is a fake, okay? And I'm not going to recommend to anyone do this. I told my son, you should never do this again. Encourage anybody as much. I think he paid it $9 or something. But it just got to show you guys, you've got to be careful out there, because you think you're buying a real one and it's not. And when you write with it, it writes beautifully. It just absolutely beautifully. I had heard all kinds of horror stories about the nibs being completely ridiculous. And this thing writes just, it's a go-to pen, folks. And it's a bloody clone. For my son paid it $10.99. AliExpress. So be careful. Don't. This pen can go for maybe $150, $200, and you think you're getting a real one, and you're not. So that's a clone, folks. That's a fake. No. I told my son never do that again. But I just thought I'd share that with you, just to be heads up. Don't get fooled. Don't get fooled. So there you have my editorial for this week, folks. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to practice that handwriting. In my next pen review, I think I'm going to show you my progress. I hope you enjoyed the show. I know I've been rambling for quite a bit of time. This week, probably another 2 reviews, or at least one. I'm looking forward to getting my Pelican M1000, and that may very well be the pen that I review. I also want to review the 823, the Pilot 823, and give you my thoughts on it. I think the way I'm going to approach it, I mean, you have plenty of 823 reviews, but I'm going to approach it to look at the nib and look at the nib sizes, and maybe do a kind of comparison with the 699, like a detailed comparison, because it was the 699 that eventually led me to the 823. I got to tell you. So maybe that's what I'll do. To make it a little different, a little more enticing. We shall see. We shall see. I haven't thought about it yet. I have the weekend to plan, and I've got all kinds of reviews already done that are waiting to be published. So maybe I'll do one of those. We shall see. In any event, grazie molto. Thank you very much for joining me. Please subscribe. Your comments are welcomed. I hope you enjoyed this hour. Timestamps below. You don't have to stick around. I'm sticking with this format, folks, rather than live. I think live is a little bit too much for me. This gives me the flexibility of doing things in a little more organized fashion. And I apologize for those of you who prefer that live format, but I've looked at many live formats, and with people commenting, and it kind of slows things down, and at the end not much is covered. So for the time being, I'm going to stick with this format. But again, it doesn't mean that once a month I won't do a live format once I figure out how to do it. Grazie molto, arrivederci, a fra poco. Thank you, folks.